I've always enjoyed the tranquility of my home, a small house in an old neighborhood, surrounded by tall trees and a vast backyard. It was the perfect place to escape the chaos of the city, especially at night, when the silence seemed absolute. But today, something was wrong. I was in my room reading when I heard the noise, a faint scratching sound coming from outside, near the window. At first, I ignored it. It must have been the wind, I thought. The trees in the yard often made strange sounds as they swayed with the night breeze. But as the noise repeated, becoming more insistent, an unease started growing inside me. I decided to investigate. I went to the window, slowly opening it to see what might be causing the sound. Outside, everything seemed normal. The shadows of the trees danced under the moonlight, and the wind was gentle. However, as I focused my gaze on the far corner of the yard, something caught my attention. A figure stood there, still. It was motionless, standing between two trees. It was hard to make out its exact shape, as it blended into the night's shadows, almost as if it were part of them. I tried turning on the outside light, but the switch didn't work. The darkness remained absolute. I looked back at the yard, my heart racing, but the figure was no longer there. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that it was just an optical illusion. Maybe my tired mind was playing tricks on me. I decided to go back to my room, but the discomfort lingered. 2 hours passed. I was almost drifting off to sleep when I heard another sound, this time closer. It was a faint dragging, like something scraping against the side of the house. I sat up in bed, ears straining, trying to pinpoint the direction. The sound was coming from the window again. My stomach tightened. Slowly, I got up and carefully pulled back the curtains. As soon as I did, the sound stopped. My yard was empty, or at least it seemed to be. My eyes scanned every corner of the garden, but there was nothing out of place, until I noticed a shadow, this time much closer, pressed against the side wall of the house. It was nearly imperceptible, as if it were trying to hide. It was tall, thin, and seemed to be watching. Without thinking, I ran to the back door and locked it, trying to stay calm. If it was an intruder, I would need to call the police, but something kept me from picking up the phone, an unsettling feeling that the figure wasn't something that could be explained by logical reasons. The scratching continued throughout the night. It came from different sides of the house, always slow, always soft, as if it wanted to make sure I knew it was there. The hours dragged on, and I could barely think straight. I didn't sleep. I didn't take my eyes off the windows. When the sun began to rise, the sound stopped. The yard returned to what it always had been, a peaceful space, bathed in the soft morning light. But something was different. I gathered the courage to go outside and investigate. In the corner of the yard, near where I had seen the figure the night before, the ground had been disturbed, as if someone or something had dug there. As I got closer, I saw what looked like a poorly covered hole. A chill ran down my spine, but before I could make sense of what was happening, I heard a whisper behind me. I never left. I turned, but there was no one there. Just the wind and the trees swaying in the morning breeze, and the shadow. The shadow was still there, now closer than ever. I've always enjoyed the feeling of being alone at home. It was the only time I could completely relax, away from the pressures of work and social interactions. That night, I was particularly tired. A long day of meetings had drained me, and all I wanted was to lie on the couch, watch something light, and forget about the world outside. The night was calm, the wind whispering against the windows, and the house seemed more peaceful than ever. I made a sandwich, poured a glass of wine, and settled in the living room. The TV was on, but I wasn't paying attention. My thoughts drifted in and out, mixing with the soft noise of the barely heard program. Then I noticed something strange. The sound of the TV had disappeared. At first, I thought it was just the signal cutting out. But then I realized that everything around me was silent. Unnaturally silent. The kind of silence that makes the air around you feel heavy, suffocating. I stood up, confused. I looked at the TV and saw that it was still on, but there was no sound. Nothing around me made a noise. Even the wind outside had stopped, as if the world had paused. As I tried to understand what was happening, I heard a faint sound coming from upstairs, a soft creak, like the sound of a door slowly opening. My skin prickled with goosebumps. I was alone at home. There was no reason for any door to be moving. I stood still for a moment, listening carefully. The sound came again, a faint creak, but unmistakable. I took a deep breath and went to the stairs. It's just the wind, I thought, trying to calm my heart, which was beating faster with each step. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing through the silence of the house. When I reached the top, the hallway was lit only by the dim light of a lamp in the corner, and that's when I saw it. The door to my bedroom was ajar. I always left it closed out of habit. Something about seeing that small, dark, silent gap caused a deep unease in me. I stood there for a moment, trying to rationalize. Maybe I had forgotten to close it properly earlier. That made sense, right? But then the sound came again. A very soft creak, as if someone was leaning against the door, gently pushing it open. My instincts screamed at me not to approach, but curiosity was stronger. I took a step forward and pushed the door. The room was empty, or so it seemed. The bed was perfectly made, the curtains drawn, and there was no sign of anything out of place. I sighed with relief and laughed at myself. I'm being paranoid, I thought. I went to the window and looked outside. The wind had returned, gently swaying the trees, and the sound of the night came back. I closed the window, ready to head back downstairs, but as I turned to leave, the air in the room grew heavy again. I felt a presence. I couldn't see anything, but there was an oppressive sensation that I was no longer alone. The door, which I had left wide open, was now nearly shut. Frozen in place, I tried to make sense of what was happening. The temperature in the room had dropped drastically, and my breath came out in small clouds. The presence around me was suffocating, almost tangible, as if something invisible was watching me closely, too closely. And then I saw it. In the mirror on the wardrobe, something moved. It wasn't my reflection, but a shadow, something vaguely humanoid, standing behind me, in the darkest corner of the room. My heart nearly stopped. The figure had no face, no defined form, just a block of deep darkness, thicker than any natural shadow. Before I could react, I felt a cold shiver down my neck. It was as if something had passed right beside me. The mirror showed the shadow moving, slowly, towards me. My feet felt glued to the floor, unable to move. In a surge of pure terror, I closed my eyes and bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I ran down the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached the living room, the sound had returned. The TV was softly humming, and the wind outside whistled again. The oppressive silence had vanished, but the fear hadn't. I locked all the doors and windows, turned on every light, and stayed awake until dawn, unable to go back upstairs. Since then, I've never stayed home alone at night again. But sometimes, when I walk past the bedroom, I feel that same presence, the same cold. And every time I glance at the mirror, I fear seeing that shadow watching me again. waiting for the right moment to get closer once more. It was an ordinary night, nothing special. I was home alone, enjoying the quiet after a long day of work. I like moments like these. Just me, the silence, and the distant world outside. The house was bathed in a comfortable dimness, with only the kitchen and hallway lights on, the rest shrouded in darkness, as usual. I sat on the couch, distracted by my phone, with the TV on in the background, just to fill the void. Outside, the wind gently blew, swaying the trees, and the night seemed calmly familiar. But then, something made me stop. I wasn't sure exactly what had changed, but I felt it. The atmosphere around me became heavier, as if something invisible had shifted, settling there with me, and the silence between the notes of wind sounded different. I looked around, trying to figure out what was wrong, but everything seemed normal. I'm just tired, I thought, refocusing on my phone. And then came the sound, a faint creak, like something had shifted upstairs. I frowned. I was certain there was no one else in the house. Maybe the wind moved something, I tried to convince myself, but the feeling that something was wrong lingered, a cold weight at the back of my neck that wouldn't let go. I stood up, slowly walking toward the stairs. I stopped at the bottom, looking up at the second floor, where the hallway disappeared into total darkness. The sound didn't come again. I sighed, thinking about how easily my mind could play tricks on me. I decided to go back to the couch, trying to convince myself it was just paranoia. That's when I saw it. In the farthest corner of the room, where the light from the kitchen barely reached, there was a silhouette. Standing, motionless, blending into the darkness. It was almost imperceptible, like it was part of the shadow, but I knew it hadn't been there before. It was tall, slender, like the shape of a person, but without any clear definition. A chill crawled up my spine, and my heart began to race. I stood there, frozen, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. I blinked a few times, hoping my eyes would adjust. Maybe it was just my imagination, but the silhouette didn't move. It remained there, still, watching. And then, as if it realized I had noticed it, something changed. From the middle of the darkness, two white eyes appeared. There was no face, just those two bright points, like empty, inhuman orbits, fixed on me. My stomach twisted, and my body reacted before my mind could, stepping backward. I knew I should run, get out of there, but something held me back. Those eyes were locked on me, and I couldn't look away. They didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at me, as if studying me, waiting for me to do something. Fear swelled rapidly, turning into pure terror. I swallowed hard, trying to force my feet to move, but the sensation of being watched so intensely paralyzed me. "You're imagining things," my mind repeated, desperate. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. The silhouette took a step toward me. The floor creaked softly, and I felt terror consume me completely. Those white eyes fixed on me seemed to glow more intensely in the darkness, as if they wanted to devour me. Without thinking, I finally managed to move. I ran into the kitchen, where the light was stronger, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. There, I grabbed a knife, trembling with fear, trying to control my breathing. I stood there, staring at the darkened living room, waiting. The silence stretched on for a few terrifying seconds. Nothing moved. The room was quiet, still, as if nothing had ever been there. But then, I saw the eyes again, now closer, at the entrance to the kitchen, floating in the darkness, those same two cold, white points, like two beacons of a presence that didn't belong to this world. My body was in absolute panic, but before I could react, they vanished. The room plunged into complete emptiness. The silhouette was gone, as if it had never existed. I stood there for a long time, motionless, my nerves on edge, waiting for any sign of movement. But there was nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow, every dark corner seemed to hide those eyes. The next day, I changed the locks and installed more lights, filling the house with brightness, as if that could keep the darkness and whatever lurked within it away. But since that night, whenever the lights go out, even for just a second, I can feel those white eyes watching me again, waiting for the right moment to reappear. And I fear the day when they won't just watch, but take me to wherever they belong.